We're on.
Hello.
Hello. Well, you must be happy lately, Jake, as a Gonzaga fan.
Oh, absolutely. Totally ecstatic.
Yeah. I have to be honest, I haven't
Anybody
watched
there?
it, but I heard they're really winning by a lot.
I'm not hearing anything.
Every game gets tougher.
Not that again. Dave doesn't hear us. I hope they, yeah. Hope they figure it out. Yeah, I heard though a referee passed out
After,
right in the middle of the game.
yeah, right at the start, yeah. Felt
Wow.
lightheaded and he collapsed, and he's okay though.
Any idea what happened?
No, I haven't heard any,
See the right thing.
I thought maybe dehydration or something. He was just dizzy.
Huh.
But you could see him, he just completely just passed out, passed, laid down, on his back.
Huh. I just heard about that. I don't know. I was wondering if they found out why. But glad he's okay.
Yeah.
And so how far have they made it now? Are they in the Sweet
Can't
16
hear
or
anything.
the,
They're in the
The
final
final.
four.
they are? Okay. So then they only have to win 2 more
Correct.
and then they're the national champions.
That's it.
Well, that's good. I don't know. Good for them. Congratulations. Hope they do. When's the next game?
Saturday.
5:20.
Yep, 5:30.
Must be PM. What do I have? I know I have something. Oh, that's when I'm getting my mom from the airport. Yeah.
Oh.
So we'll have to skip the game. And that's not in town, right? That's at some centralized location anyway.
Indianapolis.
Yeah. Is it always there or just,
Well, because of the COVID, it's in a bubble. That's all the games are played there.
wow, okay. Is it normally everywhere, all across the,
The regionals are in various cities, and then the final is always in some
okay,
central final location that moves around.
yeah. Good, well, we're still waiting for Jelaine, who is here on campus somewhere. And maybe John and Jenna. I think they're planning on it. So we can kind of wait. See what happens. But give them a minute or two anyway. I'll get a Bible.
You have your Bible.
Any of them. Surprise me.
Everybody's.
If you can. Yeah. You know what? These chapters I could. Because I wrote a paper on this section. Hello.
Hello, sorry.
Not a problem. Did you see Jenna and John in the parking lot?
I saw somebody in the parking lot. I wasn't too sure.
Okay. Eric's here. How are things over at Amazon?
Much the same as always.
Have you ever got one of my orders?
No, well, first of all, I don't deal with packing.
Okay, yeah.
I deal, basically the way it works is the stuff gets loaded and somebody stows it and somebody picks it up and sends it down the line.
Okay.
In between there, they have people who count,
Uh-huh.
basically do inventory all day. That's
Oh,
kind of where I
you do inventory all day.
mostly, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Big fan.
That's gotta be hard.
Going from bean counter to thing counter.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's not hard, it's just.
Does it inspire you to buy more things?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I would Just that we
Yeah.
I'm not, Amazon uses this part.
I keep saying I'm gonna stop using Amazon. And then I want to buy some, rare, hard to find item. And I just search for it.
Sometimes you don't find an item.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there are others, but then you gotta set up your own account. But I feel like I should. Sowers, can you hear us now? Okay, good. You're muted, but that's fine for the moment. And we don't know if John and Jenna are gonna be here, so we can, I think, go ahead and get going. Hope everyone's having a good Holy Week. Of course, there's not much going on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Holy Week. Although there's a lot to read in the Bible. So Jesus clears the temple and then has his big confrontations and then teaches about the end times. So quite a lot going on. But for now, we will get back to Job, starting with 28. I'll say a prayer and we'll go for it. Dear Lord, we ask that you'd bless us now as we consider these chapters of Job. Help us to find true wisdom in you and to live wisely in the fear of you. Help us to cherish the blessings we have in this life and to not take them for granted, but all the good things we enjoy, especially the fellowship we have with you through Jesus Christ. Amen. All right, and a little bit of review. Chapter 26, we saw Job's final reply to his friends, more or less. And how did that dialogue come to an end, just generally speaking? You could either say,
Kind of what they do.
yeah, kind of with a whimper. I would have used the word, or I was thinking petered out, but same idea. That Bildad didn't have much to say in chapter 25. And then Job basically says, you haven't helped me at all. Who helped you utter these words? And then he talks about the mystery of God. And there's a lot to God that we don't know and understand, which was kind of a new thought. And then what was Job's more nuanced explanation of the prosperity of the wicked in chapter 24, verses 18 through 25? They've been talking a lot about the wicked and their fate, and this is going to come up one more time. They disappear. Yeah. So the wicked may prosper for a while, but eventually they die. And so they'll get what's coming to them at that point. So that's where we left off. And now we're back to 27. And I pointed out last time, 27 begins and Job continued his discourse. And so this starts a new section. He's not really replying to his friends at this point, at least not directly. He's just continuing to talk about important themes related to what's happening. And let's go ahead and start with Job 27, verses 1 through 6. Any volunteer to read it?
I'll read that.
All right, thank you, Jake.
And Job continued his discourse. As surely as God lives, who has denied me justice, the Almighty, who has made me taste bitterness of soul, as long as I have life within me, the breath of God in my nostrils, my lips will not speak wickedness, and my tongue will utter no deceit. I will never admit you are in the right till I die. I will not deny my integrity. I will maintain my righteousness and never let it go. My conscience will not reproach me as long as I live.
Yeah. So what does Job vow here?
Steadfastness.
Yeah, he's not going to give in.
He's innocent.
Yep, he's innocent and he's going to maintain that till the very end. So, and question 4, why would it be wicked for him, at least in his own mind and maybe in truth, why would it be wicked for him to admit his friends were right?
You have to be wicked or done some evil.
Yeah, yeah. And while he's not confessing that, he's not trying to say he's perfect, he's saying he hasn't done some great sin. And maybe you remember last time we saw Eliphaz say things like, you snatched the childless, let's see, from Your wickedness is great. You gave no water to the weary. You sent widows away empty-handed. That is why snares are all around you. Job saying, I haven't done anything like that. So it would be dishonest to admit that. Any thoughts on that? It's a pretty straightforward what he's saying, although pretty powerful. Now, verse 7 to 12, he has some harsh things to say for his enemies. Anybody want to read that? All right, Lance has got it. Dave, we'll call on you next.
May my enemies be like the wicked, or my adversaries like the unjust. For what hope has the godless when he is cut off? When God takes away his life, does God listen to his cry? When the stress comes upon him, will he find delight in the Almighty? Will he call upon God at all times? I will teach you about the power of God. The ways of the Almighty I will not conceive. You have seen all this. You have seen this all yourselves. Why then this meaningless talk?
Yeah. So in verse 7, may my enemies be like the wicked. Who are his enemies?
Sounds like it's pretty bad friends.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it sounds pretty harsh, but it seems like this is he's speaking harshly against his friends. And he's saying, may you be like the wicked. And then how does he change the conversation about the wicked? What does he say in these verses about the fate of the wicked?
They're going to get their just.
Yeah. So this is probably the best section that makes it the most clear that they're going to get their due punishment in the afterlife. What hope do they have when they are cut off, when God takes away his life? At that point, the wicked are in trouble. Just like after he dies, Job himself and the godly will be with God and be vindicated. So his problem is really just patience, waiting for that day and wondering why it doesn't happen on earth. Will he find delight in the Almighty? Will he call upon God at all times? You know, the idea when you die and there's no one to face but God and you've been wicked your whole life, then you are in trouble. So that part is pretty helpful, I guess, or we'd agree with it. Yeah, what were you saying?
I just kind of have a question. I mean,
Yeah.
what struck me was verse 11. I will teach
Oh,
you
sure.
about the power of God is the mighty and seal.
Mm-hmm.
What was the basis of him knowing about the power of God? I mean,
I'm not sure where he gets it, but he just claims to know it, and he knows what God is going to do. And
This footnote says, I will teach you. Job was about to remind his counselors about an issue on which they all agree, that the truly wicked deserve God's wrath. The three friends have falsely put Job in that category.
is that the Concordius Study Bible? Okay. Yeah. Well, as we look now at verses 13 to 23, this is a little bit more confusing of a section because so this part we agree with, and it makes sense to us. Yeah, God's eventually going to give it to the wicked. But then he makes it sound like he almost sounds just like his friends again in verses 13 to 23, more so than he did in 24. That other section here, it almost does sound like he is like he could be one of his friends. This is another, let's see, before we even read it, look at question 7. In this section, whoops, I don't know why I had that. That's the other section. This section is sometimes seen as a mislabeled response of Zophar. Unlike the previous sections, oh, that's where I should have put that reference. It is hard to see a subtle advance in the argument. It does sound like it could be Zophar. And just to sort of show you how similar this sounds to what the friends have said, let's see, I'll have Eric keep your hand on Job 27, and I will flip around a little bit. So first of all, you read Job 27:13.
here is a fate God allots to the wicked. The heritage a ruthless man receives from the Lord.
Okay, here is Job 20:29 from Zophar. Such is the fate God allots the wicked, the heritage appointed for them by God. I mean, almost verbatim. And then now you read 27:15, and I will read 18:19.
The plague will bury those who survive, and their widows will not weep for them.
Okay, this is not exactly the same, but he has no offspring or descendants among his people, no survivor where he lived. Now you read 27:20.
Terror is overtaken like a flood. A tempest snatches him away in the night.
And I'll read words of Bildad and Zophar. Terror startle him on every side and dog his every step. And then 20:25, he pulls it out of his back, the gleaming point out of his liver. Terrors will come over him. Total darkness lies in wait for him. And then last, you read 27:21, and I will read 7:10.
The east wind carries him off, and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place.
And here's 7:10. He will never come to his house again. His place will know him no more. And so there's a lot of very similar language here. And now go ahead, I guess, as long as you're at it, Derek, if you could read verses 13 through 23, and then we'll try to come up with an explanation. And you'll see I list a couple different ones that all, at least two of them, I think are not bad. Actually, any of them work, but go ahead and read 13 now through 23. Chapter 27 is where we're at.
27, 13, 23. Here's the fate God allots for the wicked, the heritage a ruthless man receives from the Almighty. However many his children, their fate is the sword. His offspring will never have enough to eat. The plague will bury those who survive him, and their widows will not weep for them. Though he heaps up silver like dust, and clothes like piles of clay, when he lays up the righteous will wear, and the innocent will divide the silver. The house he builds is like a moss cocoon, like a hut made by a watchman. He lies down wealthy, but will do so no more. When he opens his eyes, all is gone. Terrors overtake him like a flood. A tempest snatches him away in the night. The east wind carries him off, and he is gone. It sweeps him out of his place. It hurls itself against him without mercy, as he flees headlong from its power. It claps its hands in derision and hisses him out of his place.
Okay. Yeah, and the issue we're thinking through is, why does this sound so similar to what the friends say? And keep in mind, there's no third speech in the third, or there's no reply from Zophar, the third friend, in the third cycle. And so what some people have said is this is Zophar's missing speech, that somehow Zophar's name got removed. Now, I don't like that solution. To me, it seems a little too much to say that, but you will see it even in some commentaries by people who are professors at what you'd think would be pretty biblical universities and stuff. Not that that makes it acceptable, but just saying, you'll see Christians saying that as a possibility. However, assuming it's not a misplaced speech of Zophar, I could think of three possible explanations there listed under question 9, and maybe you can think of other explanations. But the first is that Job is now quoting his friends in a mocking way. And if you look at verse 12, that seems like it is a possibility, because the last thing he says in verse 12, why then this meaningless talk? And then so he proceeds to give examples of their meaningless talk. So yeah, so it's possible that that's what's going on here. And in the ancient world, they didn't have, or at least in this book, they don't have any way of marking quotations. So you just have to infer it from the context. So that's certainly a possibility. The second one, Job is just vacillating, and he's now agreeing with his friends. Yeah.
The paragraph above says, I'm not going to do it. I'm standing fast. I
Yeah.
don't see how he's vacillating so much.
Right. So it doesn't seem like the best explanation, but you can still say that you're not going to vacillate and do it.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but it doesn't seem to fit. But especially because just in verse 9 and 10, he says, for what hope has the godless when he is cut off, when God takes away his life? That was verse 8. There, the stress was when you die, you're going to get trouble. But now it sounds like the friends earlier that the wicked are going to experience nothing good and a terrible calamitous downfall, and nothing's going to be left of their place. But then I guess option C is simply you read this section in light of what he says earlier in the chapter. And so that tempers the way that you understand it. He's not saying that this always happens, but eventually they're going to die. And once they die, they're totally gone. And then they face judgment. I don't know if none of those is a perfect solution. Yeah.
That first one sounds good to me.
The first one that he's quoting?
A.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite possible. Which would explain why we saw 4 or 5 places where he is almost verbatim quoting the Friends. And everything else in here is similar to what the Friends have said. So maybe this is his final, and it kind of would make sense then, because this is his summary of their wisdom. They have shown what they think wisdom is. And the next chapter 28, and we might as well go there now, is all about wisdom and how we can't find it by searching. Human beings, the only way to find wisdom is to have God reveal it to us. And it's a great chapter. So maybe we'll keep that in mind. After we read 28, we'll revisit the issue of their connection, but we'll go on just to make good process. Thoughts on his age?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd assume.
Growing children, it's gotta be old age and more, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's not young, but I don't know. I don't think it says. It says how long he lives after all this stuff at the end of the book. But I'm thinking that after this, Job lived 140 years. He saw his children. And there's kind of 2 ways of taking that. Did he live 140 years more, or did he live to be 140 years old? The syntax there is vague, so it could be either one. Yeah, I don't know. What?
Grandsons, 4 generations. So
4 generations.
Gonna take some time.
Yeah. Could he do that in 80 additional years? Let's say he was 40. Or wait, no, that would be, let's say he was 40, 100 additional years. Possibly. But yeah, that
takes a bit of time. First one is
yeah, it would be pushing it unless they're having children.
generation interval, roughly
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. In any case, yeah. Why do you ask? How do you think it might?
It's, the older we get, the less focused we are. I mean,
Oh,
able to
okay.
remember things.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you're quoting exactly his friend,
Sure.
are you really able to do that close? I don't know.
Well, I bet he could remember some of those phrases because they really struck him to the core. And also his sickness and disease and his stress probably would have affected his memory too, but I don't know how.
I just,
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. But let's look at 28 now. This is one of the highlights of the book. Actually, 28 through 31 are my favorite section probably. So anybody want to read verses 1 through 11? And it's just great poetry, and it's about mining. It's the only part of the Bible that gives a detailed description of mining. And I think it's also the oldest description of mining in recorded literature.
I'll do it.
That's the gold miner. Go ahead, let him read.
All right. Thank you, Jake.
There is a mine for silver and a place where gold is refined. Iron is taken from the earth and copper is smelted from ore. Man puts an end to the darkness. He searches the farthest recesses for ore in the blackest darkness. Far from where people dwell, he cuts a shaft in places forgotten by the foot of man. Far from men, he dangles and sways. The earth from which the food comes is transformed below as by fire. Sapphires come from its rocks, and its dust contains nuggets of gold. No bird of prey knows that hidden path. No falcon's eye has seen it. Proud beasts do not set foot in it, and no lion prowls there. Man's hand assaults the flinty rock and lays bare the roots of the mountains. He tunnels through the rock. His eyes see all its treasures. He searches the sources of the rivers and brings hidden things to light.
Yeah, thank you. So what makes this great poetry?
A lot of visuals.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of imagery and very brief descriptions, but they get the full picture in your mind. So that's kind of what a poet goes for. A few words but very vivid. Anything else that makes it good poetry?
It's a lot like what it is.
Yeah, you're both saying similar things. The connection to reality, I think modern poetry is kind of like modern art, it's all over the place. But classical poetry, one of their greatest goals was to describe something, especially back before the age of photography and especially video. You could describe what it was like to be in a Italian pasture, overlooking the vineyards, to somebody sitting in England who's never been there, and you could evoke what it was like. And that's kind of what this does with mining. I mean, it's
also tells
cool.
how far they would go to look for what they're looking for.
Yeah, that.
Nobody has gone before.
Mhm.
Not just mining, but also geology.
Sure.
Talking about underneath it has turned up this fire.
Yeah,
That's all.
yeah,
That's something that the ancient Greeks and Romans did not understand, or else they would have been back today.
yeah, exactly.
But apparently Joe knew about it.
Sure. I mean, I suppose they must have known there was molten stuff down there simply because occasionally it would shoot out of volcanoes.
Right.
But they didn't. Yeah, I mean, it's we probably think this seems more advanced than we would expect them to know.
I'm thinking fire is
Oh.
used to purify.
Oh. Well, you wouldn't want to do that below ground, though. Well, I mean, that would.
You wouldn't want to.
Yeah, well, true. I mean, I don't know how they did it. That's a good point. But yeah, so this is hidden. It's far away. No animal passing by can see it. It's just some small opening in the ground. But then they have these deep tunnels, and they're hanging by cords and dangling and swaying. And all these rubies coming out. It's really neat. And oh yeah, that's right. 11. For those who have been to Wallace or other mining towns, what similarities does this description have with modern mining? You learn anything about modern mining? And I don't know.
If you've ever been in a mine, if you've ever been in a mine, it's utter blackness once they turn the lights off. It's
Yeah.
shocking blackness.
Yeah, and that was in here somewhere, right?
Open pit mines now.
Yeah,
Blackest darkness.
yeah. What about open
Also-
pit? Oh, we'll go with Dave first. Yeah.
Yeah, periodically miners have been trapped, and he talks about men dangling
Mm-hmm.
and they sway. And just at the last major electrical outage, our miners were trapped a mile or more down in the mine.
Wow.
They couldn't get out. A couple did. They had a ladder.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
You're gonna go up Republic, up Highway 20, one of your
Yeah.
trips. In the Republic area, that's what there's that thing up, we mined 12 million ounces of gold out of this area.
Wow.
And they go, it looks like cube, but if you
Huh.
go through it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
It's like the hole is hidden, the place is hidden.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you drive through, like he was mentioning, driving through Republic. They tell you it's happened there, but there's no evidence. Same thing when you drive to Montana. The first several times I drove over that, I mean, I had no idea of the volume of silver. That was like the #1 silver producing part of the world for decades. But yeah, it's all underground, so you don't see it.
To this day, they tell you, simply fish out of the Spokane River from uranium contamination.
Yeah, from all the chemicals. Oh, wow.
Right.
From over, that's more Kennewick area, right?
Or
is
I don't
that-
know exactly where the lines are. I haven't charted it all out.
Well, Manhattan Project
There's
area.
contamination from Alcoa.
Alcoa?
Yeah.
What's-
Alcoa.
Is that a company or what's Alcoa? Oh, okay, yeah. Got it.
They say, they told me, and in the diving community, they say, Yeah, you go down there and get the big crayfish, you know, come all up, but you should only do it every so often.
Yeah, because there's still residue in the water. Wow. Yeah.
You spit, but.
Mhm.
Once you got 'em, so it's not good.
Yeah. So this is a really neat section, but then he connects it to wisdom. And so let's read that section next, verses 12 through 19. Any volunteer? Wait, yeah, Anna. Anna was going to. Did I ever get Dave though? I never
Okay.
did. We'll go back to you soon if I remember.
I'm still here.
Anna,
So what first?
12 to 19.
But where can wisdom be found? Where does understanding dwell? Man does not comprehend its words. It cannot be found in the land of the living. The deep says, it's not in me. The sea says, it's not with me. It cannot be bought with the finest gold, nor can its price be weighed in silver. It cannot be bought with the gold of Ophir, or precious onyx or sapphires. Neither gold nor crystal can compare with it. Nor can it be had for jewels of gold. Coral and jasper are not worthy of mention. The price of wisdom is beyond rubies. The topaz of Cush cannot compare with it. It cannot be bought with pure gold.
Yeah. So what are the points of comparison between finding wisdom and mining for precious stones?
Fine.
Yeah.
As painfully as it is,
Yeah.
it's far easier.
Well, maybe not just easier, but possible. I
Yeah.
mean, you can find these stones if you try hard enough. You can try even harder to find wisdom, and you'll come up wanting. Now we'll see there is a way to get wisdom, but not through human skill and ingenuity. Yeah. Or through buying. So I think the two things are, first of all, the searching for it. And just like, that's what's kind of neat. Probably mining would have been for them one of the more impressive technologies that humans had developed. So he uses that as an example of human ingenuity and skill and effort. And yet all of that couldn't get you wisdom. At the same time, wisdom is more valuable than even the stuff that people will go to these great lengths to obtain. So there's kind of 2 points of comparison there. And really, even though it's a long section, half of the verses are just saying, yep, it's better than this gem, better than that gem, better than this one too. So then let's look at 20 to 28 and see where wisdom actually is found. So Dave, now we'll call on you.
Can you hear me now?
As long as you can sort of face the computer.
I'll do my best.
All right.
Where then does wisdom come from? Where does understanding dwell? It is hidden from the eyes of every living thing, concealed even from the birds of the air. Destruction and death says, only a rumor of it has reached our ears. God understands the way to it, and he alone knows where it dwells. For he views the ends of the earth and sees everything under the heavens. When he established the force of the wind and measured out the waters, when he made a decree for the rain and a path for the thunderstorm, then he looked at wisdom and appraised it. He confirmed it and tested it. And he said to man, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to shun evil is understanding. Amen.
Thank you. Yeah, that's good. So in what sense then is wisdom hidden? We just saw in the previous section, you can't find it. It is hidden, sort of.
In the human world, or people, that's not where it is.
Yeah,
Unless you have your Lord, you're not in the right area.
exactly. Yeah.
No human philosophy, no human thoughts and discourse. You don't get it.
Yeah.
So you're looking around among people, you're not gonna get very far.
Yep. It's good. Anything else? Yeah.
Education, but not wisdom.
Yeah, we can give education, but we can give certain types of knowledge and we can give certain practical wisdom about how to do things and how to live, but true wisdom has to be given. And so, yeah, it's not in the deep, it's not under the ground. I suppose maybe it would say it's up in the sky, but it's not up in the sky. But back then they didn't have airplanes or anything. That wasn't a concern. So then what is the connection between God's wisdom and man's wisdom? And I'll tell you I remember in grad school, we had this aged old professor, and he made a big deal about this. He kept saying, well, you say that we can have wisdom, but how can we have wisdom if it's hidden? And no, whatever answer we gave, he wouldn't accept it. But I think maybe he was just being stubborn. But what do you think? The connection between God's wisdom and wisdom for man?
God knows everything. One knows nothing, basically,
Yeah,
compared to him.
sure. And Simon?
One is wisdom.
Well, yeah, okay. So God really is wisdom. I mean, he understands it thoroughly. It was there at creation.
The Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Is that Janelle?
Oh, sorry, I thought we were muted.
You're not muted, but we couldn't tell what you said.
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom.
Yeah. So the wisdom that God has and the wisdom that we have is not the same, right? It's not as though he gives us per se all his wisdom and everything. But he knows what is wisdom for us, and that is fearing the Lord and shunning evil. Anything else on the connection between God's wisdom and man's wisdom? Looked like you had.
The very pinnacle of human wisdom, the greatest heights they could possibly achieve, would be to arrive at the very starting point of God.
Yeah.
Because the most accurate thing that they could possibly figure out on their own is, yeah, God knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. So the wisest thing human reason could accomplish would be to the very beginning of the gospel. And that's sort of true. Like Plato and Aristotle and guys like this, they were able to reason that there was one God, even though they lived in a world of polytheism, and that he was a moral God in some way or another. But that's about as far as your mind can take you. And that's if you're a very wise person. And it still falls short of what we have through Revelation. All right, so then I think we get it that God is the only one who has wisdom. You have to get it from him, and he's told us what it is. It's to fear God and shun evil. Now, how does it, so think now about chapter 27 and the connection between these two chapters. So can you see any way that chapter 28 about wisdom is a logical, not conclusion, but answer or comment on 27, that in some way it flows naturally from chapter 27?
Well, the first part, kind of not, I don't know, the first part, I'm hoping to say that, not wrong, but the second part,
Yeah.
everything, you know, the wicked or not put it together, wicked or stupid, and you're not going to be wise until you know God.
Yeah, so the wicked don't have wisdom. And also the friends and the stuff they were saying, they had come to this through their own trying to think and reason about what makes sense. And they had not achieved wisdom. And so Job reminds us what wisdom is. True wisdom is not understanding everything about how the universe works. You know, that is something that is kind of disappointing to people. In fact, just this week, maybe last week, it's all running together, but I sat down with a guy, and he basically had a bunch of questions for me, and I couldn't answer any of them. You know, he started out with, well, where does God come from? And I mean, I said, well, he doesn't come from anywhere, but well, how can that be? It's like, I don't know how that could be. And it just proceeded from there. And yeah, and people think wisdom is having all the right answers, but look what God says wisdom actually is. fearing the Lord and shunning evil, not being able to answer every question that comes by. So, in fact, often wisdom involves leaving off, not trying to answer things we can't answer. I included a long paragraph from the self-study commentary, but that's just there trying to connect these two chapters. I think we've kind of hit these points though, so we don't have to read it all right now. We can go on now to chapter 29. But so 27 and 28 was discourse part 1. And I think it's probably the best, especially that thing about wisdom is the most useful thing that they've said so far in the dialogue. Everything else has been kind of blowing smoke. And he basically says, all right, we don't have answers, but we know we should fear God and shun evil. And so he finally does come up with the right answer. Now it says in 29:1, Job continued his discourse, and we're going to get 3 chapters. He talks about how good his life used to be, and then he talks about how bad it is now. And in 31, he swears he didn't do anything that should have brought such a great punishment on himself. We're only going to look at 29, and I really like this part because it gives us insight into Job's life before. So even though it's not part of the dialogue, we really get a better sense of what kind of person he was and what kind of things he did back in the day before all this happened. So we'll go through it here. First, anybody want to read 29 verses 1 through 6? Thank you, John.
And Job again took up his discourse and said, "Oh, that I were as in months gone by, as in the days when God watched over me, when his lamp shone over my head, and by his light I walked in darkness, as I was in the prime of my days, when the friendship of God was over my head, my tent, when the Almighty was yet with me, my children were around me, and my steps were bathed in butter, and the rock poured out for me streams of oil."
Yeah. So in this first section, what aspects of his previous life does Job long for? Yeah. What was his relationship with God like before?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Watched over him.
Yeah, like every step he was there. Intimate friendship with me. Also, verse 5, he had his children too. He misses them as well. And really, it's the end of 5 and 6 that give the evidence of God's blessing. He had these children. He had cream, which was, I think, just something that showed you were doing good financially. You had all the food you needed. And olive oil, he had plenty of food. And God was watching over him. And now he doesn't feel that way. Now he feels like God's abandoned him. God's using him for target practice. God's silent, and he doesn't understand why. So he misses that. And it's kind of significant that that's the first thing he thinks of, that we see he really was a pious guy, and that was important to him. But there was a lot more that was important to him as well. So now let's look at 7 through 17. Anybody?
I can read again if you're short on
Okay.
readers.
Yeah, sure. You're a good reader, Jake. Might as well.
7. When I went to the gate of the city and took my seat in the public square, the young men saw me and stepped aside, and the old men rose to their feet. The chief men refrained from speaking and covered their mouths with their hands. The voices of the nobles were hushed, and their tongues stuck to the roof of their mouths. Whoever heard me spoke well of me, and those who saw me commended me, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless who had none to assist him. The man who was dying blessed me. I made the widow's heart sing. I put on righteousness as my clothing. Justice was my robe and my turban. I was eyes to the blind and feet to the lame. I was a father to the needy. I took up the cage of the stranger, a case of the stranger. I broke the fangs of the wicked and snatched the victims from their teeth. I thought I will die in my own house. Whoops, I'm
Well,
sorry.
we'll stop in 17 first.
Okay,
That's a section. So what blessings does he dwell on here? Yeah.
Honor and respect.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what Derek was going to say too. Yeah, he had honor and he had respect from everybody. I mean, he was the most honored person. And why was he so honored?
He did a lot of good things.
Did good work.
Yeah, he deserved it. I mean, he had the means to bless others, and he did. The dying, the widow, the poor, the lame, the blind, the needy, the stranger. He rescued them. He destroyed the wicked. So sounds like he was a really good guy. And that also is interesting because all this talk about the wicked, we realize that was a big part of his life before, was trying to make sure justice was done. He cared about that and saw it as part of his faith to do justice, not just in the sense of crime and punishment, but helping people who were needy. And so he got the respect from the chiefs, from the elders, from the young people, the nobles. All these people paid him a high degree of respect. So that's kind of interesting. And then verses 18 to 20 give us another little insight about his thinking in the days gone by. Eric, you want to do it?
Sure.
Thanks.
Job 25 verses 18
To 20, yeah.
to 20. I thought, I will die in my own house. My days as numerous as the grains of sand. My roots will reach to the water. The dew will lie all night on my branches. My glory will remain fresh in me. The bow will never ever renew in my hand.
Yeah. So what was his thinking back in these days?
Things are good, I'm gonna stay good.
Yeah, they're good. And why wouldn't they stay good? What could go wrong? Yeah, you don't want to fall into that kind of thinking. Yeah, and let's see, even not only would he have long life, what about the dew will lie all night on my branches and the roots reaching water? What's that?
His family probably, its lineage probably grows.
Yeah, his family will grow and increase. Dew was how he's probably living in the land of either Edom or Syria. And in those areas, there's not a lot of rain. So dew was how plants got a lot of their moisture. And being in a desert area, there'd be a lot of condensation with the heat and the cold. So it's just flourishing. And yeah, he would stay even strong and old. And notice that has been taken away because he's so covered with sores and everything. He thought his bow would ever be new. So, he'd be 100 years old and he'd be out there hunting. So and you can understand why he'd think that, right? But why did he think that? Is it because he did have some of this false theology that because he was such a good guy, that's what he deserved? Or was it just a natural assumption?
Like when you're 20,
Yeah.
you're gonna live forever.
Right, yeah. But like you said, God was with him. Why wouldn't he? No, you don't think you're gonna live forever? Good for you.
Everybody but Simon, the general.
Yeah.
population, when they're 20, they don't think about death or.
I will say I did,
or anything.
but my dad died when I was 21, so that actually probably is why I come to
That's
think
a
of it.
result of that.
Yeah, otherwise I would have. You're right. All right, what about, I think we get the point. I mean, it's neat. It's a good insight, but we understand. And then this last section, 21 to 25, it's similar, but see if you notice anything a little different than that previous section. Any volunteer? Anybody who hasn't read, want to read it?
Sandy hasn't.
Sandy?
No.
I'll read it. Why not? I get to read too, right? Men listened to me expectantly, waiting in silence for my counsel. After I had spoken, they spoke no more. My words fell gently on their ears. They waited for me as for showers, and drank in my words as the spring rain. When I smiled at them, they scarcely believed it. The light of my face was precious to them. I chose the way for them and sat as their chief. I dwelt as a king among his troops. I was like one who comforts mourners. So now what does he remember? It's similar, but a little different from the previous.
With respect for his wisdom.
Yeah. So not only did they honor him, as we saw before, but they really listened to him and they liked listening to him. I mean, that would be a great feeling, you know, everybody's waiting to hear what you have to say and they let you have the last say. And once you've spoken, that's it. I mean, he was really highly regarded. And it sounds like because he was such a good guy, I mean, he had wisdom, he did what was right. And so they respected him for that. And he enjoyed it. He liked being a leader. So then, nothing new to read, but a few more questions. Question 19. What new information have we learned about the pre-disaster Job?
He was as high up as could be.
Yeah,
He was like a king. He was like a little god on earth, and he fell to the lowest that possibility.
yeah. And so we knew about the wealth, but we didn't know about the social esteem before.
Yeah. And he valued that.
Yeah. I mean, notice he never really mentions, I miss being wealthy. The only thing that comes close is he had cream and he had olive oil, but he doesn't dwell on his wealth at all. That it's his closeness with God and the respect that he had and the security that he thought he had. Those are really the three things that he focuses on. Anything else we've learned about pre-disaster Job?
You can understand why Satan chose him to have all
Yeah.
this happen, because he was up so high, and if he fell down low, surely he would not love God anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just the contrast.
Yeah, it's an incredible contrast. And unfortunately, we'll have to wait 2 weeks to see chapter 30, where we get this contrast. Maybe we'll even just read chapter 29 straight through without comment, just to get it back in our heads next time. But then what insight does this section provide regarding Job's reaction to his friends? So now think back over the dialogue. Think of when his friends came to visit. They sat there for 7 days silent, and then he wished he'd never been born, and then they argue and they insinuate he did something wrong, and he defends himself, and he kind of goes up and down and has some pretty lows and accuses God of not being fair, but then expresses faith in God. And then they start arguing about whether God punishes the wicked people or not. So over the course of all that, does this provide any insight or change the way you look at it?
He is no longer held in honor.
Yeah, that really sticks out, that the way his friends treat him is so different from what he had experienced before. Yeah, no wonder. I mean, that seems to be the thing that bothers him more than anything else, is this loss of his status and respect.
Yeah, I was gonna say it kind of gives a little bit of priorities,
Mm-hmm.
because he's lost almost literally everything he could,
Yeah,
and yet the things that he's most, longing for, most, regretful about, most, longing
Mhm.
to have back, which was not lost, is not so much the material wealth as the immaterial aspects of life.
yeah. So it's those are his priorities. Maybe it makes you think, if his friends would have just said, yeah, Job, I just don't see how this could happen to you. It doesn't seem right. You're such a great guy. Maybe they wouldn't have pushed him over the edge. Maybe he would have just come back and said, yeah, you're right, but we shouldn't question God. He knows what he's doing. But instead, they start attacking him, and he loses this respect, and downhill we go in this spiral.
Sounds like they were jealous of him.
Yeah, it does. Lance, if you didn't hear it, Lance said it sounds like maybe they were jealous of him the whole time,
Hmm.
and it's coming out. Seems quite possible. So yeah, this is a very insightful chapter. And maybe the last thing I'll point out is how effective it is putting it here, because the prologue to the book could have been 5 chapters long, and it could have gone into great detail about all the wonderful things Job did. But I think it's more effective that it comes out here in his own words at the end, because it kind of makes you rethink the whole dialogue and the whole situation. and you're maybe less quick to judge him and more sympathetic.
If these are his friends who, among the people who probably sat in council with him,
Yeah.
or who, would be among those people who like sat down and shut up when he walked in to say his piece,
Mhm.
or they probably had consulted him for wisdom in the past, and then suddenly, all that is thrown on its head,
Mhm.
and if Job was most concerned about his honor, his status in society, to have his friends come down on him like a bag of hammers,
Yeah.
that probably hurt worse than almost anything
Yeah.
else, and does really reframe the context of 2,000 some odd chapters.
Yeah, exactly.
Back and forth.
It reframes it, and you realize that might have hurt even more than the initial loss, because you can blame the loss of your possessions on an accident, but not the loss of your friend's respect.
Well, pretty
You know?
good here, you can almost feel the hurt and the pain that he's
Yeah.
experiencing. Like, I'm being treated like this now, but I used to have this. Like,
Yeah,
why?
Sure.
I feel betrayed. I hurt. You can almost feel it.
Yeah.
As you read it.
yeah, and he hasn't even done anything. So, yeah, it's a really powerful section. So next time what we'll do is I think we'll just read that straight through without talking about it, just to get it in our minds. And then we'll look at chapter 30, and I'll just read the first verse and you get a sense of it. But now they mock me, men younger than I, whose fathers I would have disdained to put with my sheepdogs. So, and it just goes downhill from there. And then 31 again is a pretty long chapter where he just swears, I didn't sleep with, I never had an affair. I never cheated anybody. I never lied. I never stopped obeying God. I didn't do any of this stuff you're accusing me of. So he ends maybe with a little bit of pride, but not a ton, especially considering everything he's gone through. So it's kind of been a long dialogue, but I think it's worth it to get to this point. And from here, the book moves at kind of a faster pace, because this is an individual section. Then Elihu is his own section, which we can probably do in one, maybe two sections. Then you have God speak, and then you have the end. So glad everybody could join. And any final thoughts or questions here?
Well, I have one question. Is there somebody named John there?
John, yeah, Jenna's boyfriend.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's official, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. He's been coming. He's been here. Were you here since the beginning? I think you were here at the first one. Yeah. So.
Two of them,
Mm-hmm.
the first one.
Every week, it's been pretty much the same crew here. And then Derek's here and the Bartons. Leslie was here twice. And Jelaine was here once, and Kelly is sometimes online. So we're having a good old time.
Good.
Yeah. But we'll see. I'm sure we'll see you guys, probably see you at Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday. So have a good night and see you tomorrow. Blessings on your week. Did you have John's going to say something. Yeah.
The only thing, one thing I wanted to mention,
Uh-huh.
it really kind of seems like chapter 28
Mm-hmm.
could have been plucked straight from Proverbs.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it had the same kind of imagery, the same kind of poetry. So, like, I really felt like this could have been Solomon writing that.
Oh, yeah.
Centuries later, and it's the same basic message.
Yeah. It does have that sound, or the same message. Some people think Solomon wrote it. I don't know. I get nervous separating it by so many centuries, but you are right. I mean, that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom is his whole thing. Now, then again, where did he get that? I don't think Solomon invented it, right? The whole point of wisdom is that it's passed down by the generations.
It really seems to demonstrate the timelessness of those principles.
Yeah.
Some people think you can substitute the word wisdom with Jesus in the Proverbs every time.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother thing. Because, Christ is called the wisdom from God. But the wisdom there is a little bit different that's in 1 Corinthians, because that's God's wisdom in coming up with the plan of salvation that no one could have invented. Whereas in Proverbs, wisdom is like right living. what is good, what is bad. The way to, obey your parents, avoid the adulterer, don't get involved with people who want to lay and rob people, on the path. But then there are some passages of Proverbs where it does kind of sound like Christ, because it talks about wisdom speaks in the first person and says, I was there when God created everything. He created everything by me. And so that sounds more kind of like Christ. So, yeah, I mean, and then Jesus is called the Word, which is more like the message than just a single word, So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd quite say you could just substitute Jesus' name, but yeah, he is God's wisdom, and all wisdom comes from him and through him. Yeah. But okay, I will end the share. So see you later, ladies. Sours are gone. Bye bye. And end the thing.
This morning, going to